How's it going, everyone? Thanks for joining us on a Friday afternoon. We're all 49ers. Below me is Tony Farmer. To my side is Maverick Pallack, and I am Grant Cohn. Kyle Shanahan just spoke to the press about 2 hours ago, and he always says really interesting stuff. It's really about asking him the right question. And I felt like I got that kicked off today, not to, humble brag a little bit. I asked him what he liked about Alex Smith, and he got into specifics. And he said, you know what? He always knows where to go with the football. And then someone asked about Nick Mullens. Same thing. Always knows where to go with the football, pulls the trigger. And that got me thinking, Kyle never really has said that about his starting quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. He'll say things like he's becoming more decisive or things like that, but not those specific things, which he clearly seems to value highly. So first question to you guys is, am I reading too much into what he said or didn't say? And what do you make of his comments on those two quarterbacks? And does it say anything about how he feels deep down inside secretly about Jimmy Garoppolo? Tony, you can start this one.
Yeah, I think I like the way you phrase the question, because when you're in the media, I think you do have to be careful of making a bigger thing out of things that are said by head coaches. An example of that, I think, is recently when Shanahan said something about, my attitudes toward quarterbacks change, and then we recently saw people on Twitter blow up. I think that was an example of people making a bigger deal out of something. I agree. I think you can make an argument for this. We've seen Shanahan on the sidelines get very frustrated when Jimmy doesn't know where to go with the ball, when someone's wide open, when he's indecisive. We've witnessed that with our own eyes. It's indisputable. Yes. We've seen it on film. And so I think there is something here. I think a good secondary question is Shanahan saying this subconsciously because this is how he feels in the deepest part of his heart? Or is he saying this to send a message to Garoppolo to sort of challenge him a bit so that he improves in this area? I'm not sure.
Good question. You like the little solo layout? I'm getting my TV.
I like that, man. You're a producer.
That's right. All right, Maverick, you're up. Your turn.
I think it could just be something as simple. That scared me for a second. Just giving Mullens some confidence. You have a backup that I know we're going to touch on later. This is a must-win game for the Niners, and you need to give your guys some confidence. That is something Mullens does better than a lot of backups in the NFL. And I don't know if it's necessarily a dig at Garoppolo. I think it's just he likes that trait in Mullens, and he wants it to keep improving because he needs to develop Mullens a little more if he does want him to be in that 26 to 35 range of quarterbacks in the NFL, which is where I think he can get to.
Yeah, to me, it's just an interesting thing because Kyle's very particular in what he looks for in a quarterback. He wants a tough quarterback. He wants a guy who can read the defense at a coach-like level. He wants a very smart guy who's tough and is also aggressive and pulls the trigger and doesn't pass up on open guys. That's what he's looking for. And I think that's why if the Niners get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo and Niner fans are like, well, why does Kyle not like Jimmy? How did he get rid of Jimmy? Jimmy wins for him. It's because of stuff like this. I mean, Jimmy is an indecisive quarterback. How many times do you see him drop back, reach the top of his drop, and not know where to go with the ball and just stand there? More than you see that with Alex Smith or Nick Mullens. And maybe that's a stylistic thing. And, in big picture, Jimmy wins, so live with it. But Kyle can't. Kyle is a stickler on the details, and for whatever reason, Jimmy just isn't that kind of guy. He's not a cerebral quarterback. He doesn't know where to go with the ball every single time. When he was at his best in 2017, he could ad-lib. If he didn't know or if the number one read wasn't open and he couldn't figure out where number two was, he could buy time. That's not who he is anymore. And the other thing Shanahan said about Mullens in particular is that he's starting to make off-schedule plays. You think, well, Shanahan doesn't like that. Well, I think he does like it, especially if the quarterback who is making the off-schedule plays is the kind of quarterback who can read the defense and let it rip when it's open. When it's not, you got to be able to do something. Jimmy isn't really that guy anymore. Maybe Nick can become that guy. I just thought it was interesting. When you hear Shanahan give specific praise, I always think, who has he not said this about? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's some people watching this, Grant, who are probably rolling their eyes saying, here Grant goes again. He's adding fuel to this fire. Why I think it's even more legitimate, whether people agree with your assessment or not, is because of the salary cap next year. I've talked about it a lot of times, on this video. And if Jimmy doesn't take a pay cut, how can you justify that salary for someone that hasn't been getting on the field? And so even if you think Garoppolo is a better quarterback, the fact that he's making so much more money than Mullens makes the question even more serious for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue that like Shanahan is looking for maybe excuses to move on. Like they know it's something they got to do financially. And so if it's something they got to do financially, maybe human nature is to be like, well, I mean, he is smarter than Jimmy. You know, he does this. He's a little bit more decisive than Jimmy. I mean, I'm not saying he's as good as Jimmy is because Jimmy wins and Nick hasn't done that, but he's a better downfield thrower than Jimmy. I mean, you know, you can kind of see him maybe convincing himself that it's an okay move.
Absolutely.
Speaking of such, let's move on. How likely do you guys think it is that Nick Mullens will be the week 1 starter next season? Let's handicap this one, like we're odds makers in Vegas.
I don't know the exact odds I would put it at, but I think he would be in the top 5 consideration for quarterbacks next season, because if they do go the route of a rookie, I think it would be Mullens as the guy week 1, kind of like what Miami did with Fitzpatrick and Tua this year, what LA was planning to do with Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert before Taylor had his lung injury. And I think that's a way to go. But if they can get Stafford, obviously Mullens isn't going to start unless Stafford's hurt, or if they can get a veteran, all the veterans that people want to bring in, I find better quarterbacks than Mullens right now. So I would go top 5, maybe 6, but I wouldn't go best odds right there. I'd say they might be better than Jimmy, though, just because I think I do like Jimmy. I've said it many times. I like Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's a great quarterback.
I like Jimmy too.
Or not great. Great was hard, but a good quarterback.
Hey, that's fine.
But I think the marriage is over in a way, and I think they'll both succeed, Shanahan and Jimmy, with other people as their partner.
So you put Mullens better odds to start week 1 than Jimmy next year?
I would go Mullens over Jimmy just because I think, like Tony said, the cap situation, I think they got to free up cap space, and I think Garoppolo is one of the easiest ways to free that up.
Right. Okay, Tony, what do you think?
I'm going to go with Jimmy as the slight favorite right now, just because he's the starter at the moment. Maybe Jimmy minus 110, so $110 is going to win you $100, and Mullens at plus 120, so $100 is going to win you 120. And then we've always got to have that other category, right? Whether it's a rookie quarterback coming in or free agent or something of that nature. But I do think Garoppolo is the slight favorite right now. I think it's going to come down to if he accepts a pay cut. I mean, what would we set the Las Vegas odds on? Will the 49ers ask Jimmy Garoppolo to take a pay cut / restructure his contract? I'd say they're going to, more than 50% chance they're going to ask him. And I think his answer, his agent's response to that is going to dictate whether he's the starter week 1 or not.
Agree. I think the Niners, before they trade him or get rid of him, would say, you know, could you make this worth our while? You've been hurt with the caps going down. We didn't expect it. Can you work with us? And the answer to that question kind of dictates who's going to be the starter next year. Because if he says, yeah, sure, then I think maybe they do keep him, especially if they're not in position to draft Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, any of these guys. If they can't get one of those guys and the option is, you know, draft someone in round 2 or trade for someone like Darnold or sign someone like Winston, maybe you say this isn't the year to move on. There's no better options out there. So maybe that in that case, yeah, but I still feel like he's done. I feel like he's not going to take that pay cut. I mean, I feel like the marriage is over. There might be a little hidden bitterness because of those 2 injuries and the report that there was a difference of opinion on how hurt he really was. I think he's gone. And if that's the case, it's going to be tough for a rookie to beat out Nick Mullens in training camp next year. And it's going to be tough for a starter like Trubisky or Winston to beat out Mullens in training camp next year. If they trade for Matt Ryan or Matt Stafford, yes, those guys will be the starter next year, or Wentz. But barring that, I think it's going to be Mullens. I think it's going to be Mullens, guys. That's my hot take of the day. I think Nick Mullens is going to be the week 1 starter next year.
So you'd take those plus 120 odds, it sounds like.
I'd take that plus 120. I think I can get some good play on that one.
Nice.
Let's stick with Nick. I see this as the biggest game of his life so far. Now, the first start Thursday night against the Raiders, that was a lot of pressure because if you're flopping that, you don't get a second chance. This one, though, the season's on the line. It's a do or die game. You can't lose. And I don't think he's ever really been in a situation like that. Jimmy has. Jimmy's been in games like that. He's won games like that. This is a new test for Nick Mullens. How do you guys expect him to respond? I forget who's supposed to go first. Sorry.
I can start off. I think Mullens is one of those guys. We've talked about his toughness and his grittiness. That's why Kyle loves CJ Beathard. And I think people see a lot of the same qualities in Mullens, the way he hangs in the pocket, even when it hurts the team, when he throws those picks, taking those hits. And I think he's not going to back down, but I don't necessarily think this is as easy of a win as a lot of people say with the 5-7 Washington football team. I think Washington's getting hot at the right time, and they have a great defensive line, so it will be a hard win for him. But if he pulls it off, that this is a big step. Even if it's one of those Rams performances or that Giants performance earlier in the season, if he can just do enough to get him the win, that would be a big stepping stone for Mullens. But I just think it's going to be a hard game for him. If he plays well like he did against the Rams, but they lose by 7, I still think that's a good performance for Mullens. This Washington team is getting hot at the right time.
I think Nick Mullens is going to have a Nick Mullens kind of game, which if you take out that one primetime game where he looked terrible, he's been pretty consistent. You know, he's not lighting the scoreboard up, throwing 4 touchdowns. And again, without that one game, he's also not looking terrible. He's a serviceable quarterback, and I think you're going to see a serviceable day from him. Something like 250 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, something to that effect.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the point you made is the key point here. I don't think he's going to pull a Eagles game again. I don't think he will. I think he's going to be himself. I think he's ready for this. He's been entrenched as the starter for about a month now, and I think he can handle the pressure. I don't think of him as a guy who only responds when the season's over, when the game's over, when you're in garbage time, metaphorically. I think he can play up to his ability in this game. That being said, it's going to be a really big challenge. He's going against almost the 2019 Niners defense. It's a lot like that. They have this monster 4-man pass rush with depth, and they can just hang back and play 7 men in coverage behind it. It's tough. He's going to have to get the ball out of his hands quickly, be decisive, know what he's looking at, check the ball down a lot. He's going to have to check the ball down a lot. He doesn't do that a lot. A lot of times he wants to go down the field. He's going to have to channel his inner Alex Smith. So that'll be interesting to see. Alex versus young Alex. I don't know.
Well, one thing Mullens should do is just check out what Ben Roethlisberger was doing against Washington last week. Obviously, the Steelers lost the game, but Roethlisberger was finding Ebron a lot of times. Ebron was getting those 8-yard catches, moving the chains, and I think that's a way Jordan Reed or Ross Dwelley or Charlie Werner, whoever they throw out there at tight end, is a way to help. And then if Jeff Wilson Jr. is the running back that leads the team in carries again, I know Mostert's been battling an injury, and Wilson kind of jumped ahead of him in carries because the game was kind of out of hand at the end. But Wilson's a really good pass catcher, and I think that's a way Mullens can use those checkdowns, since those are a couple players that can make a guy miss. And then if Kyle finally gives the ball to Deebo Samuel in the first half, I think that will also help Mullens.
Yeah, it's always a good idea. Good strategy.
People keep talking about Washington's defensive line, deservedly so, but it's really the matchup of their defensive line against the 49ers offensive line. So you're going to have Grossu and Compton who are out, and I know that they're not, barn burners. They're not all-star players, but let's think about depth. If any one player on the 49ers offensive line goes down, just think about the possibilities of the names of the kind of guys we're going to be having on that offensive line against that dominant defensive line of the Redskins, of the football team, excuse me.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is even if no one gets hurt on the Niners offensive line, they still got McGlinchey and McKivitz. They got to block, Jonathan Allen and Montez Sweat and Chase Young. So, Nick, you better get that ball out of your hands real quick. And the thing about Nick is, and throwing the ball to Jeff Wilson Jr. and Raheem Mostert, be a little bit more decisive with that. If you take too long, those guys will be out of bounds by the time you get on the ball. There's no shame in checking the ball down, especially in this game. Just take a page out of Alex Smith's book. It'll keep you healthy, Nick. This is going to be the biggest challenge. It's going to be a bigger challenge for him than last week was. It's a better defense than the Bills had last week. All right, let's move on. Let's stick with you mentioned Jeff Wilson Jr. Who should be the 49ers starting running back? And I'm not saying it should be Jeff Wilson Jr., but he just had a great game. He's been terrific this season when healthy. Raheem Mostert, is still good too. Who do you think should be the starting running back?
I think it comes down to health. I mean, is Mostert healthy? Yes or no? I mean, We're hearing that may be a reason why he didn't get so many carries last week.
Lingering
ankle.
high ankle thing. I mean, it's kind of thing where you're healthy, but you're never going to be 100% healthy until probably next year.
Yeah, so if he was healthy, I think Mostert is the no-brainer. And then next has got to be Wilson. I mean, the only way that you can justify Wilson not starting over someone like Coleman or McKinnon is if you're going off of, where you got him at in the draft, et cetera. And because he wasn't a high-profile player coming out of college, you're going to still give him doubts. Jeff Wilson has taken every challenge that's been given to him. He has scored you a touchdown practically with time running out to win that game against the Cardinals. So he's shown you that he can play in crunch time. He's shown you that he can be a little bit of a power runner. He can be a little bit of a speed guy. I like Jeff Wilson a lot. I think he's incredibly underrated. I would love to see that guy get, 15 or 20 carries a game in one of these last games this year.
Jeff Wilson Jr., to me, has been a guy that, at least for the last couple of years in the NFL, has been the best fifth string and fourth string running back in the NFL. I think he was definitely capable of being a top 2 guy. And then this year, he's finally getting that opportunity, hopefully for the last couple of games. And he reminds me of Matt Breida in the sense where the whole time you're like, why can't they just give him a chance as the starting running back? They always find a new guy to take over. And then by the end of the year, Matt Breida would end up being the starter for the Niners. And that's how I feel with Wilson. But I am a big Mostert guy. I think as of right now, with the limited quarterback situation, the limited offensive line, I think Mostert carries the most upside just because I think he has the best burst of all the running backs. And with the offensive line not being able to hold their blocks that long, it helps to have a guy that gets past the defensive lineman before they break past the offensive line, in my opinion. Of course, he doesn't have the most power, so if those defensive linemen break off the offensive line and get him, he might not break that tackle, and it could be a -1 yard rush when Wilson could have made it a 2-yard rush. But I think he has the most upside to make it a 15-yard carry or a 10 on that halfback toss. I think it was in the third quarter or the fourth quarter when he hit the line and then cut back in. That was, I think, the most impressive run of the day this past Monday. And I'd like to see Mostert get a couple more carries if he is healthy.
Yeah, Mostert did look good in that game, but he's mentioned that he's got this lingering high ankle thing. He's not as explosive as he was. It's nagging and it hurts. And, that's a reason to scale him back and use him off the bench like last year. Also, Shanahan last year would say that the reason he started Tevin Coleman was to wear down the defense. He was the more physical runner, and he would sort of soften up the defense for Mostert. Well, Coleman's a much more physical runner than, Wilson's a much more physical runner than Coleman ever was. So you could use Wilson in the role that Coleman was supposed to fill and never really did very well. Seems like that would be a smart way to use them the rest of the season. And then next year when Mostert's back to 100% health, start him and bring Wilson off the bench. But I like the idea of giving Wilson 15 carries. I mean, he really does run hard, and he theoretically should be even better in the second half than the first.
Yeah, the guy can catch the ball. He can even do goal line carries a little bit. He can be serviceable at the goal line. I honestly don't know how he is as a pass blocker. I haven't seen enough of that on tape, but he seems to be an all-around good, solid player that could handle those kind of carries.
He's also the kind of guy in a shotgun set with 2 backs. He can be the lead blocker, and they use him that way frequently. Like he's almost like a fullback. I mean, he wouldn't line up in the I formation and lead on a linebacker, but he does do that kind of stuff. So he's very versatile, and yeah, he's got a future with the team. I like him, and why not have him start down the stretch? If you acknowledge that Raheem Mostert is not 100% healthy, and save him, take him off the bench. That was his role last year. Seems to be like a good timeshare anyway. So let's stick with. Oh, keep going.
Sorry, as creative as Shanahan is, have we ever seen Mostert and Wilson on the field at the same time? Both of those guys?
So.
I don't think we ever have, ever.
No, we've seen Deebo Samuel and Raheem Mostert in the backfield together. They did that last game. They put Mostert in motion and then handed it off to Samuel, and he gained like 3 yards. It was a cool little concept, but the Bills are ready for it. I would like to see those two on the field together. It's something that Sean Payton would do with Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara. And what the Niners could do is put Mostert in the slot, Wilson at running back, and have Mostert run the jet sweep. He's your fastest player. I mean, that's as great as Deebo Samuel is. Raheem Mostert would probably draw some attention running the jet sweep too. That's a cool way to get him the ball. Wow. I don't think they've ever given Raheem Mostert the ball in a jet sweep. I'd like to see that. It's your fastest player. So let's stick with telling Kyle Shanahan who to start, who not to start, because we know who should start next to Jimmy Ward at safety.
I would go with, just for this game, Tarvarius Moore, just because I think you need to give the potential starter for next year at least one more chance. I think he carries the most upside of the backup free safety options. But if he struggles in this game, he'll have a lot of times to defend that deep ball on those zone defensive alignments where Terry McLaurin and Cam Sims, they account for 281 of Alex Smith's 399 deep yard passing yards. So he'll have a lot of opportunities to make up for that Buffalo game where he struggled a lot. But if Moore struggles at halftime and it's still a close game and he's given up a touchdown or two, you got to go with Marcel Harris and maybe put Jimmy Ward at that deep safety position, because we know Harris also struggles as that deep safety. They got to find a way to stop McLaurin and Cam Sims. I know Washington doesn't throw deep a lot, but when they do, they have one of the best receivers in the NFL as a deep ball receiver, and Cam Sims, who I probably love more than everyone else in the NFL. I discovered him a couple weeks ago, and I think he's going to be a matchup problem for Sherman.
I think as Washington's looking at tape right now, he is someone that they could potentially exploit. So I'm okay starting him, like Mav said, but I think a short leash, like Mav said as well. But check this out. When we're just talking about next week's game right now, when Mosley gets back, when Cohn Williams gets back, okay, and the secondary is healthy, I think that player should be Richard Sherman. Grant has posted some videos of Sherman playing safety in some spot moments, but picture Mosley on the outside, Verrett on the other side. You've got your nickel cornerback Williams, and then Sherman playing safety. I'm fantasizing about a game against Seattle that means something, because every time Russell Wilson plays the 49ers, he doesn't challenge Richard Sherman. Well, if you put him at safety, you can't just ignore the guy. Sherman's going to get some opportunities. And is there any player in the NFL that knows Russell Wilson psychologically better than Richard Sherman, who lined up against him every day in practice for all those years? And that would be a fun game to watch.
I love that suggestion. I think I would want to do that too if I were Robert Saleh. I'd like to get Richard Sherman out of cornerback. I don't think he can play that position well enough anymore. I would like to play him at free safety. I don't know if Sherman would like to play free safety. He might say, well, I've never played that position and I didn't get training camp to practice that position, and I'm going to hit free agency next year. I don't want to put bad tape out there. You guys aren't even committed to me. I could see him saying no. It'd be interesting to see if he was against it. I would definitely at least broach the subject with him. But let's say he's not into it for those reasons, and your options are Tarvarius Moore and Marcel Harris. The argument to go with Moore is that playing him at free safety allows you to play Jimmy Ward at strong safety, where he is a playmaker. He can make a bigger impact on the game. Plus, Alex Smith throws lots of short passes. Jimmy Ward should be highly involved if he's playing strong safety in this game. You play him at free safety, he'll do his job, but he won't be able to make the same impact. So there's that argument. The problem is Tarvarius Moore has been so bad the last 2 weeks that he's costing the Niners touchdowns. He was responsible for 2 touchdowns last week and the long one to Cole Beasley up the seam. He's killing him. I mean, I like the idea of the short leash, but that's the kind of thing they did with the Kello Witherspoon last week. And even if you have a short leash, he can still give up a touchdown, and then you pull him. So I'd be a little tempted to just play Marcel Harris at strong safety, move Jimmy Ward back to free safety, and at least not have to worry about Tarvarius Moore, not knowing the play or not getting the check or whatever it is that's hurting him right now. So I might go a little conservative and say, I'm benching you, man. You've just made too many mistakes, taken too many bad angles, lined up incorrectly too many times. I can't trust you. Next, I'm not giving up on you, but we're gonna work on this in training camp next year or after we get eliminated. We'll get you back on the field after we're eliminated. For this game, we're gonna just try to not have you lose it. So I don't know. I used to really like Tarvarius Moore, but he's letting me down. Me personally, how's that feel, Tarvarius? Is Washington the most difficult game remaining on the schedule for the 49ers?
I think it depends on how Kyler Murray heals up, in my opinion. I think Arizona matches up really well against the 49ers just for the fact that Kyler Murray can run so well, but he's been injured for some reason, his shoulder injury hasn't affected his throwing as much as it has with his running, and he's just not running the ball as much as he has. So that could be a benefit for them. And if he's injured, that would be a big swing in the NFC playoff picture. So it depends on his health. I'm not sure if Seattle and Los Angeles, what's going to happen the next couple of weeks. So who knows what Seattle's going to be doing with their starters and how much they'll want to do. So I think it depends. But I would go Washington right now just because I think their defensive line is going to dominate this offensive line.
Yeah. If you're looking at the guys in Las Vegas, they would say no, right? The 49ers are a 3.5 point favorite this week. I think they're going to be underdogs against Seattle. So the odds makers are saying that that this is going to be an easier game, but I think it's a sneaky difficult game. I think it's going to be harder than people think. Here's something I don't hear anybody talking about. This is a revenge game for Kyle Shanahan because of his pass with the Washington football team. Trent Williams, it might be a revenge game because of all that drama. Has anybody talked about how this could be a revenge game for the Washington football team? Do you guys remember the slip and slide game last year? The 49ers sliding all over the field. In my opinion, unprofessionally and immaturely. I mean, they were celebrating that game like it was the Super Bowl. And tell me that people on the Washington football team don't remember that, and that they're not sitting there saying, we can end these guys' seasons. Those SOBs who did that on our home field after a shutout, we can end their season. And they remember that.
Absolutely. Yeah. See, I kind of think this is even a tougher game than the Seahawks game. And I know odds makers would disagree, and they're right. But, and I get it. Like, Russell Wilson is a lot more dangerous than Alex Smith. I mean, boom, right there. But we saw what Nick Mullens did to that defense. It's a terrible defense. They did add Carlos Dunlap. It has more of a pass rush now, but I think Nick Mullens can tear it up. I think most quarterbacks can tear up that. Maybe not Colt McCoy, but I think Nick Mullens is going to have a good game against Dallas, against Arizona, and against Seattle. I don't know what it's going to look like on Sunday against Washington. This Niners offense could get shellacked. I mean, it could be really, really bad. So I don't know. This Washington defense is interesting, and they have a complementary offense, an offense that's not going to commit 3 turnovers the way that the last couple of Niners opponents have. I mean, I don't know if the Bills did, but the Rams did. That's not going to happen in this game. They're going to run the ball. They're going to control the clock. It's just going to be such a challenge. The Washington football team. Oh my God! Now I can't monetize this. The Washington football team is not going to beat itself. They're a lot like the Harbaugh Niners with Alex. They just don't. They're not going to beat themselves. And so Nick Mullens and the Niners are going to have to take this game from Washington. And the Niners actually have been beating themselves. Mullens will do that. He's not experienced. He doesn't have a career of experience of being cautious like Alex Smith. So yeah, I think this is a tough one. But a good point you made, Tony.
Washington's offensive line is better than people think too. So they have like no big name players in their offensive line right now. But going into last week's game against the Steelers, they had, so for drop back percentages, when a quarterback drops back, Alex Smith saw a clean pocket. It was like 74% of the time. So they were in the top 10 for giving their quarterback a clean pocket. That was going into last week's game against the Steelers, who led the league in sacks. And I know they were without Dupree, but they played pretty good against that dominant Steelers defensive line. So their offensive line is better than people think as well.
Well, that's good news for 49er fans. Pick a winner. We'll go out on this one.
So I am going with the 49ers to win this game, but it is not very comfortably. It's one of those games where I agree with you, Grant. I could see it getting out of hand. Why I'm saying I think the 49ers are going to win is because I'm putting my trust in Shanahan. He's had all this time away from his family to devise a game plan, kind of like he did against the Rams, where he sort of, I don't want to say neutralized Aaron Donald because nobody does, but he came up with that really nifty game plan where with the short passes where he could neutralize the 49ers' biggest weakness, the interior of their offensive line, and neutralize the Rams' biggest strength, Donald, and the defensive line. I'm looking for some sort of magic from Shanahan, okay? This is what you pay Shanahan for. This is why you gave him an extension, okay? These kinds of games where you're undermanned and there are glaring weaknesses, I think Shanahan's going to pull it out. But would I be surprised if he didn't? Absolutely not.
First off, on the celebration, at least with the in the rain, Tony, that was my Twitter header for like 7 months last year. So I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a Gen Z cusper, so I like trolling. But I think Washington's going to win this game. I picked the 49ers in Niner Knicks column this week, but after watching more of the tape and just seeing what Montez Sweat did against Pittsburgh last week against Ben Roethlisberger, getting a couple of pass deflections, I think Washington's going to have a really good defensive day. And I think they hold the Niners to under 20 points, but I don't think the Niners give up more than 23. I would go around 21, 20 for Washington, and the 49ers getting to 13-17.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to pick the Niners, but for different reasons than Tony. Tony made great points. Tony is right. Kyle Shanahan is getting paid to pull out wins like this, but I still think that Robert Saleh is going to be the one who brings this one home. I think Kyle Shanahan, and not because he's better than Kyle. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Kyle's task this week, Kyle's challenge is outrageous. And he's to blame for it a little bit. He set this offensive line up. He built this. This is what he wanted. And it's so outmatched. So good luck, Kyle, with any of the stuff that you draw up. The defense, though, I mean, the defense was embarrassed against the Bills, but the two previous games, they destroyed the Rams. And I thought they really did as well as anyone could expect them. Way above, exceeded expectations against the Saints. Gave up 27 points, but a lot of those were off turnovers made by the offense. Held them to like 4 yards of play. So they were coming off two dominant performances against Drew Brees and Jared Goff. And now they're going against Alex Smith, who's a good story. He's a good player. I mean, all that. But come on. I mean, he's a B quarterback. And I think the Niners are going to, I think they're going to play like the Niners defense we normally see from them. They're going to keep Washington, even though Washington's a good offense, I think they're going to keep Washington to, I don't know. I don't feel that confident about this, guys, but I feel like the Niners defense is going to have a big bounce back performance, even though they won't have Kevin Givens or DJ Jones. That'll hurt, but they should have K'Wan Williams. And I think that'll be a big deal because Dante Johnson didn't seem to know what his job was in cover 3, which is fair. I don't know how much reps he's had playing nickel in cover 3 in his life. So K'Wan Williams comes back. That's fewer coverage busts. I think the Niners win like a 2.19-17 kind of game.
See that.
So watch them lose by 30. That's all the topics I got for today, unless you guys want to talk about, Terry McLaurin a little bit more. Nah.
Well, what do you think that's going to do to the defensive line not having those two guys in there?
Well, those are your two nose tackles. Kinlaw can play some nose tackle, and the way the Niners have been doing this scheme, basically both defensive tackles have to come inside at some point. So it seems to me starter's going to be Kentavious Street. I don't think he's that much of a drop-off. Or maybe it'll be Darian Daniels. It'll be those two guys. I think they'll be fine. What do you guys think?
I just think without Antonio Gibson, probably, I think he's out. If not, he's extremely questionable or doubtful for this game. And I think he's the versatile running back in Washington's offense. So if they end up going with Peyton Barber and J.D. McKissick, that helps the Niners defense in terms of personnel, because when Peyton Barber's out there, it's most likely a run. You can send Darian Daniels out there and stuff that in the middle run, which is what Barber does most of the time. If it's McKissick, that opens it up more. He's Alex Smith's check down guy. You can get a couple more defensive ends, move Eric Armstead inside, get Kentavious Street out there, and then you get more pass rushers on the field. I think that helps the Niners without Gibson. I mean, obviously,
Gibson's out.
Yeah. So I think that helps just having no Gibson and having a one-dimensional running back in Barber and a close to one-dimensional receiving running back in J.D. McKissick.
I think Gibson being out is one of the best news for the Niners. Here's other things going in their favor, why I think they can win this game. A dominant defense it's going to bounce back. Gibson's terrific. He's really good. He's averaging 4.7 yards per carry, and he has 11 touchdowns, something like that. He's out. That'll make things tougher. Also, Washington played on Monday, just like the Niners, but Washington was in Pittsburgh. This is their second straight road game. That's tough. I think that's probably one of the reasons the Niners are favored this week, because odds makers know how difficult that is, and probably the stats the winning probability of teams who have the winning percentage of teams who have flied that much in 2 weeks, played back-to-back road games. It kind of reminds me of the Vikings last year when they went to New Orleans, beat the Saints in overtime, which was an amazing upset. Everyone thought, maybe they could compete with the Niners, and then just didn't even show up to Levi Stadium. Maybe we could see something like that.
It's their third straight road game.
Is it their third straight road game?
They were at Dallas for Thanksgiving, so they had an extended week. But sure. I mean, they probably went home after that game, obviously, because it was a Thursday. But they've had a long time away from playing at home. So I think that, like you said, big issue. Three straight games away.
That's a great point. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So going back to the defensive line thing, I think I agree. There's not a huge drop off in any of those guys. They're all pretty similar in terms of quality. But I worry about the rotation. We saw last year, it was really evident when guys got hurt, the defensive line just wasn't playing as well because everybody else had to play more snaps. And so that's what worries me there a little bit is the depth and the fact that you're not going to be able to have guys rested and playing their best. They might get a little bit fatigued.
Also, it seems like Kentavious Street is like good for one roughing the quarterback penalty a game, whether or not you think it's legit or not. I mean, he hits the guy and they throw the flag. I don't know. Kentavious, don't hit him or work on your time. I don't know what to tell him. The one against Breeze seemed like a terrible call. But the one last week was like, dude, that's going to – I don't know what to tell you.
The one last week he messed up. He deserved the flag, but Josh Allen made it look so worse with his neck snapping back.
Absolutely.
He was so dramatic about it, which is a good play with Allen. For Allen, that's what you're supposed to do. But it made it look way worse than it was.
Agree. And if Nick Mullens gets hits like that, there's no way they're throwing that flag.
No.
That's the biggest problem of Nick Mullens is that no one respects him. You can't have a quarterback like that. You need a quarterback who gets the flag when they get destroyed. So, Nick, you got to work on, your cell job or paying off the refs or whatever it takes. You need to get them to throw that flag because you're getting crushed. You know what I'm saying? There's like a tier of quarterbacks who get the calls and a tier that don't. It's like a binary system in the NFL.
It took Cam Newton like 7 years to get an unnecessary roughness penalty, and he's a running quarterback too. Yeah, it goes as it does. But remember, before the Bills game, I was saying how Allen wasn't getting any unnecessary roughness penalties at all. He doesn't slide, so he doesn't get those. But he also wasn't getting a lot called in the first place. So maybe he finally hit that marker that he needed to get in stats halfway through the game. I don't know.
Or maybe it wasn't Allen so much as it was Street. Maybe Street's got a reputation. He gets around the quarterback. Oh, you kid. Because the thing about Street is he actually runs very fast. If you notice those situations where the quarterback's getting out there and Street like makes a beeline, he's really fast. And he must arrive with some surprising force that the refs and the quarterback are not expecting. The thing that I've noticed, I remember in training camp before we go, they would always do this thing where they practice special teams, and they would practice fielding like a pooch kick where the guy just kicks it to one of the up guys. The
DeMarcus Dobbs drill.
Yes. And it's once a day, they would kick the ball to Kentavious Street, and he would take off up the field, and I'd be like, man, that is the fastest 320-pound man I've ever seen. He must run a 4.7. So, yeah, that guy can move. I'd like to see if he does it again today. I don't know what to tell you, man. You're probably going to get the 15-yard flag anyway. If you knock the quarterback out of the game, I guess it's worth it. No, don't do it. It's Alex Smith. We like Alex. I don't know what to tell you, Kentavious. You're in a tough spot. You're in a tough space. I don't know. Get a Pro Bowl, and then they won't throw the flag, I guess. All right, guys. Thanks so much. When we go off the rails, it's time to stop. I think it's time to stop. But have a nice Friday, and we'll be back when the Niners play. They play this weekend.